Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Board of Selectmen meeting. Tonight is Wednesday, March 27, 2019. And if I could ask everyone to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Any amendments to the agenda? Okay. I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as submitted.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Chair says aye. And any announcements? Okay, good. Okay. So tonight we are here for a one agenda item. It is for the proposed project of the Ayer Green residence. We will be listening to the presentation. We will go for an overview of the 40B process, review of department head concerns, and we will then open it up to public comments. I ask that anyone who speaks, including when you come up to the table, the microphones here at the table are for the camera. It's not necessarily for the back of the room, so please make sure you enunciate so that everyone can hear you. Okay? All right. Come on up.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. Again, my name is Adam Costa. I'm an attorney with the firm of Mead, Tellerman & Costa. I represent Ayer Solar 2 LLC, which is the entity that has proposed the project that you now know as Ayer Green Residences. I want to thank you, first of all, for scheduling tonight's meeting and for scheduling it as a dedicated meeting to this project. As you know, we've been before you twice now. This is our third meeting. Each of the first two meetings were more brief, just general overviews of the project, got some limited feedback from the board. But as we had stated at the last meeting, we had desired some more substantial feedback from the board, an opportunity for board members to discuss amongst themselves the request that we've made for a letter of support or an endorsement of the LIP project, as well as an opportunity for you to get feedback from members of the community. So thank you for scheduling tonight's meeting for that purpose and for scheduling it as early as you have, despite the challenges that I know it presents to you in your full-time job. So with that said, we hadn't prepared, although I'm happy to give, a presentation, a substantial presentation of the project tonight because we have presented it to you twice already. But I see you've got many more residents and members of the community who are in attendance tonight. So if you'd like me to, in sort of an abbreviated form, I can provide a 5 to 8 minute summary of what the project's all about. Calvin Goldsmith, who's here with me tonight from GPR, who has prepared the plan that you see both up on your screen and here in paper form, can also provide some of the detail as well as how the plan has transformed from what we had originally presented to you back in November of last year, if that's the board's wish.
Yes, please.
Thank you. We presented a letter back on November 13th of last year before the holidays to your board. And what we explained in that letter is that this is a site of originally what was a proposed solar facility that did get a permit from your planning board. The land was subsequently divided or combined in some fashion in an effort to further develop the project. We ran into some litigation. We are still in litigation with respect to that project. So my client began to look at some other alternatives for the site. A proposed 40B development is something that had been contemplated even before solar was investigated as a potential for the site. And so beginning in the fall of last year, my client began to sort of dust off those plans and take a second look at them. Working together with GPR, what we put together was a concept plan that we presented as an attachment to that November 13th letter to the board. The proposal was for a development that consisted of townhouse-style units that would be proposed to be for sale, a mixture of bedroom counts, 1, 2, 3 bedroom units, exterior parking for the most part. What you see on the screen is, again, somewhat transformed from what we originally presented, but the original proposal was for the same number of units, 55 dwelling units in total. As a 40B project, there is a requirement under state law that a minimum 25% of the units in the development be designated as affordable units, and that means units that would be saleable or affordable to individuals, households whose income is between 70 and 80% of the area median income. So this is somewhere between the Section 8 housing that you might know, where it's somewhere in the 30 to 40% of area median income range, and more traditional market rate housing, which is somewhere 100 to 120% and up of the area median income. So that was a proposal that we had made. What you see before you, both on your screen and here is a large-scale plan, is something that has transformed a bit over the past several months as a consequence of some feedback that we received after the November meeting that we had with the board. After the feedback, not only from the board, but feedback we received from staff, we made certain modifications to the site. We tried to better incorporate what's known as traditional neighborhood design in an effort to provide for a more aesthetically appealing development, a development that functions in a different fashion. And that's what you see now on your screen. It's different, same site, same general developable area of the site, proposed now as was proposed in the beginning, but the design is somewhat different. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Calvin to sort of give a bit of a review of what you see on your screen.
Okay, thank you. For the record, my name is Cal Goldsmith. I'm with GPR Inc. here in Ayer. We're talking about a 55-unit project. Carla, can I steal this?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
A 55-unit project. Our entrance road out here comes off of Washington Street. As has been pointed out by your DPW director, we will have some engineering to do with that entrance. We'll likely go to a retaining wall. We'll widen that, change the geometry from what you see here on the screen to make it a little more perpendicular to Washington Street. We do have fairly decent sight distance in both directions at that location. We expect to be able to engineer that, but it will be wider, and it will most likely require more than 5,000 square feet of filling of wetlands, so we probably would end up going for an Army Corps permit to allow that to happen. The roadway comes in. We have these units here, which are 3-bedroom units. Much better, thank you. These are all 3-bedroom units, some with 2-car driveways and 1 parking garage. Others over here with 3-bedroom units with just 1-car driveway with a 1-car garage parking as well. We were concerned about this being a long, straight run into the site. So we looked at a whole bunch of different configurations in this area. We finally settled on this one because it allows the traffic to come in, come to a complete stop, and then make a right-hand turn to continue the rest of the way. So by way of traffic calming, we slow this down. It also allows for people that live in these units to proceed straight ahead and get to the back of their units where their parking areas are. As you probably know, we've talked about before, traditional neighborhood design. One of the goals of traditional neighborhood design is to have the front of the units on the street with a sidewalk to get connectivity between the different units and make more of a neighborhood rather than having a unit that's fronted by a garage with 2 cars and in a 2-car garage and then the garage face, and then all the living happens behind the unit in the backyard, a private backyard. So this is intended to adhere to that concept. So the back of these units in here, in this area is where the parking, and for each unit, we've got a parking space and then we've got a green space in the back of the unit. So it's a small 10 by 20 green space private to each unit that could be fenced. In fact, we're proposing fences between to delineate each unit's green space from the other units to give them a small area that's particular just to their unit. The rest of the green space all around the project is common space. As you come down this roadway, you come to another stop sign. You can go left or right into the square here with the common in the middle. The common will have will retain some of the large specimen trees that are in the woods now. A lot of the smaller trees and probably a lot of the pine trees we would take down so we can have a grassed area with a gazebo, pathways of some sort through here. We expect to have a landscape architect involved in helping design this, but this is just our rendition of it. And Along this square, you'll notice in front of each of the units we've got parallel parking. This also is a characteristic of traditional neighborhood design where you can actually park on the street in front of your unit next to the sidewalk. And the other piece of it that we picked up on was the front porches. We try to have front porches on each unit fronting on the sidewalk. So again, the small green area leading out to the sidewalk, so when people come out, sit on their porch, talk to their neighbors, they can go for a walk around, visit with people. Makes it a much more community-oriented development. In this area and here, we've got visitor spaces here, and we've got visitor spaces over there. Now, if you look at the numbers down here, we've got 161 parking spaces, including garage spaces, for 55 units. So that's just slightly less than 3 per unit. That's a lot for a development of this sort, so we may have some flexibility in eliminating some of these common spaces and or some of these common spaces. I would be more likely to eliminate some of these. We probably want to keep some just so we have proximity to these units here, but we may be able to cut that back a little bit. One of the things that we strive for with this development is as much as possible to have permeable pavement as part of our stormwater management strategy. To that end, all the driveways we're proposing behind the units and the parking spaces behind the units will be permeable paving in areas where the soil can support it, which is basically this large square area. Soils in this area are generally pretty good and would infiltrate well. So all the driveways behind that don't get the full traffic of the square will be permeable pavement. The pavement on the interior and the main roads would not be permeable pavement. That would be regular pavement for the heavier traffic loads. We're also proposing this last unit in this area right here would have, and I think in a slightly later version of this we show it, but there's actually it might be in there. Yes, there is. I just can't see it on this screen. But there's a patio proposed here, so this would be a small cafe that would serve people in the development as well as people walking on the rail trail, and also serve as another gathering place and give people on the rail trail a place to walk to if they wanted to, if they were in the area and they just wanted to go and have something to eat or drink during the summer or winter hours. It's also potentially could service people walking the rail trail to go to the train station. About a ways up, about a quarter of a mile up from the center of town, so that could be done as well. The development itself is fairly compact. There were comments in some of the board members or in some of the staff members' replies that it was excessively dense. We don't see it that way. With an 8.5 acre parcel, we've got 55 units. That works out to be approximately 6.5 units per acre. Again, this is supposed to be a denser type of development. 40B developments typically are. State guidelines are for anywhere from 8 to 40 units per total acreage per acre. We're at 6.5, so we're below the 8, and that 6.5 only applies to the 8.5 acres that we're actually using. If you look at the entire site, and in Adam's letter he talks about a 49-acre site. We actually, what we're showing here is about a 34-acre site, because there's another piece of land in here that we're not including in this, although Adam may end up being correct, because we may need to include that in order to loop the water line at some point, but we haven't gotten that far. We have not spoken with DPW about that either. He had made mention of that as well, but in any case, if it's 34 acres, which is the smaller site, the density for 34 acres is about 1.6 units per acre. The zoning in this area is different than the zoning for the neighborhood above. The neighborhood above is a 40,000 square foot zone. These lots are generally larger than that, and down in this zone, the minimum lot size under your existing zoning is 12,000 square feet. So about 3.5 times as dense right off the bat, just based on what your existing zoning is. And we're proposing slightly less than twice that density for the project that we've got here. Again, only applying to the actual area of the site that we're using. Stormwater management in some areas will not be very difficult, in other areas will be challenging. We did quite a bit of design, and it was a fairly complex stormwater design for the solar driveway coming in, especially in this area here where it's the tightest. In our new design, we won't have the slope that we had with the solar project. We'll have retaining walls, so it will give us more room to open this driveway throat up, which also may give us a little bit more room for stormwater, but stormwater will be a challenge. That'll be, we're going to do a lot of low-impact development in the site itself, as your town planner had suggested, and we will also take advantage of that on this entryway, but we're confident that we'll be able to engineer that. We've also shown stormwater management in this area right here. We've shown some stormwater management in this area over here. And that, as well as we've got two existing depressions, or actually it's one long existing depression right here. We have shown that as being utilized in some fashion for stormwater management. Seems to be a good use of the site, and we would actually like to use that without disturbing the trees in there and just be able to, because that's a sandy area, it infiltrates very well. We'd like to be able to use that without having to cut trees and just use it in its natural state as much as possible. But as you can see from this, and as was pointed out by your DPW director, it does cross the property line. In some ways that may not be a problem, especially if we're discharging on our own property and it largely infiltrates before it gets to the other side. And this one, the bottom of the basin is almost entirely off our property, so if we're going to use this, we may need to be cutting trees and doing some different use of the area. What I will say, however, is we have not sized these. We haven't done any engineering calculations on this project as yet. So we're not sure, especially with the permeable pavement, how much we would be required to infiltrate, and this may be way more than what we need to do. We may not even need to use this upper one at all. We may be able to just use the lower one, and if after talking to the state we were told that we cannot discharge any water onto their property, or if we think that's improper or illegal, then we would be forced to cut trees along here and build a berm to retain the water on our property. We're hoping we won't have to do that. We're also hoping that the area that we need is sufficiently small so it won't cause a problem, and we won't need to resort to that. We may not even need to use this upper area at all. But all we're trying to do by virtue of this is to identify areas that we could use for stormwater management if we need to. Again, this is a conceptual development. This is not an engineered plan. We put quite a bit of thought into the grading on the site, how it will work, how these units will work. As I talked about in our last meeting, we've got different units. The units at the southern end of the square here will likely be one-bedroom units. They have a garage on the first floor, which takes up some of the space. So it will be a two-story building, but the part of the first floor will be taken up with a garage. So these would likely be one-bedroom units. These in the back here may be drive-under units based on the grading. If we can make that work, which would then put the garage under the building, allowing additional space on the first floor, which then would more likely be able to put these at two-bedroom units along with these in here, which would have the same drive-under capabilities, and along here. In this area here, we put the garages alongside the units to free up the space in the unit itself. These will be 3 bedrooms by virtue of the fact that not only do you have the garage out of the main building, but you've also got additional space over the garage that could be used potentially for a 3rd bedroom. So we're not architects. We haven't designed these units. We haven't laid them out to see how all that would work internally, but I think we've allowed enough square footage and enough flexibility for the architects to be able to come up with a design that would work and accomplish what we're talking about. We do have wetlands on the site. As you can see, this whole area, the stippled area in here is all wetlands, including up into this area here. We will, I would love to be able to find a way without disturbing these wetlands to be able to utilize them to help with stormwater management. That may not be possible. The DEP in the past has not allowed us to use existing wetlands as stormwater management areas. So I've seen it done once before in another town. It worked out really well, so we'll pursue that in an effort to cut back on some of these other stormwater management areas, and the possibility that we may be able to eliminate some of them. We're showing the yellow trails. These are trails that we're proposing. Some of them, like this one, are mostly existing, but then trails that will come through the development, go along the edge of the wetlands here, around this area, come back out this way to allow people, if they wanted to, could walk sidewalks. The sidewalk does go all the way out to Washington Street, but then they could come in and do a loop and get into the edge of the wetlands and walk along in the woods, which would be very nice as well. That, in addition to the rail trail as an amenity, as we've talked about Adam talked about in the literature, we're very close to the hospital, which is the town's largest employer. We're also within easy walking distance of the high school, which is the second largest employer in town. That, plus the proximity to the rail trail, about a quarter of a mile from the center of town on the rail trail, and the ability to put in shuttle stops so that the Montechusett, the shuttle that runs from Devon's to the center of Ayer to the hospital, could also stop here. That would increase the ridership, making that more viable. We've got a couple of stops in the development that we're proposing for a shuttle, which I think would also be a good amenity to the people living in the development. Our vision of this is a very high-quality construction. Ayer could certainly support that with the property values that they have. 25% of the units would be affordable. Under the state regulations, that means 25% of every type of unit in the development has to be an affordable unit. So it would be not just the one bedrooms that would be affordable, it would be 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units that would be considered affordable. I think in some of the literature you had estimates of what affordable would be, ranging from $137,000 to $200,000 for affordable units from 1 to 3 bedrooms, I believe. I haven't verified those numbers. I haven't developed them myself, but I think they're probably in the ballpark. The 137 may be a little lower than it actually is, but I'm not sure. I guess that would depend on also on the construction costs and if they could hit that lower number. But there is a formula. It's based on spending a certain percentage of your income and and having an income of 70% of the mean income in the town itself. So there's a formula we would have to follow that would determine the value of those units for the affordables. And other than that, it's market rate for the other 75%. Can't think of anything else to tell you about it. Do you have any questions?
Madam Chair, I had a few words at the first meeting about the LIP process generally. I see that, I don't want to take you off your agenda, I see that the next item on the agenda is an overview. Would you like me to speak to that? Did you intend to speak to it yourself or reference the materials that were submitted? I know you received a couple of pages of documents, I think from town council, that had provided a similar overview to what I had described in November or December, but I'm happy to speak to it briefly if you'd like me to.
Robert, were you planning on speaking on that, or?
Madam Chair, I can, and if it's the purview of the board, I can, and through you if you want Attorney Costa too, but I did prepare just to give a brief overview of the process, if you'd like.
Sorry, do you guys want to hear from Robert or from the attorney? Robert?
Our side from
Madam Chair, members of the board, in terms of the overview of the 40B process, and I'm just talking about the process, not the project. 40B refers to the Mass General Law chapter, for those in the audience when we talk 40B, and we're talking about affordable housing, as everyone knows. And the state of Commonwealth of Massachusetts has a requirement that every community reaches a 10% of affordable housing. Our Office of Economic and Community Development estimates that the town of Ayer is currently at 8.7%, and they work very closely with this. And they also anticipate that over the next 4 years, the town will lose about 73 units. So that percentage is a state requirement. communities across the Commonwealth are at different levels on that, but the expectation is at the 10%. So procedurally tonight, why we're here, is the applicant, and I think it's important to note that the Board of Selectmen or the town cannot stop this project. I think that's an important point to make. We're talking, there's two ways, we're at a crossroads, if you will. The applicant would like to do what is called a LIP, a Local Initiative Project. That's what LIP stands for. And they're asking the Board of Selectmen, as the chief executive body of the town, to give either a letter of support or a memorandum of agreement, I'll talk about it in a minute, to work with the developer and the Department of Housing and Community Development. That's the DHCD, that's a state agency in Boston. Now, the applicant is looking for the LIP. The applicant does not have to pursue the LIP. These gentlemen could leave tonight or whatever's decided, and they could still proceed with this project. They would go to the DHCD in Boston to proceed with the project. The Board of Selectmen would be notified by the DHCD when that project would be going to what's called comprehensive permitting. The comprehensive permitting happens in both cases. That's largely done by the Zoning Board of Appeals, but the project has to go through all of those steps. That's basically what the question is tonight. Ultimately, it is the Board of Selectmen's decision, however they see, to either endorse, to work with the developer and the DHCD. And to do that, they would either need to give a letter of support or, more importantly, could choose to do a memorandum of agreement, which is an agreement between the Board of Selectmen and the developer with specific items or specific components, and under 40B, an MOA, when executed, is enforceable like a contract. Or the Board of Selectmen could take no action and the ball is back in the applicant's case, can proceed with the state through that process. Even if the Board of Selectmen has complete objections, that does not prevent them from going to the state. So I think it's important, that's the state law, that's the state process. So what is the difference between the two? So the LIP process obviously has the town's support. The Board of Selectmen would support that through a letter or through a memorandum of agreement. The town at this point has more of an opportunity, specifically with a memorandum of agreement. The Board of Selectmen can put binding requirements or components in that MOA. I mean, it is a negotiation. That doesn't just mean the applicant is going to accept that, but those terms of the MOA are enforceable as a contract. So there is, if you will, more of a level of control from the town initially. The other thing is, with the LIP, the town has a monitoring role with that. In other words, with the DHCD, the expectation would be that the town, specifically the Office of Economic Development, they do this, would have an annual role in monitoring to ensure compliance with the affordable units, how the units are being sold, that they're being used properly. So there is that monitoring piece. In a non-LIP, meaning through the state, that's handled through the DHCD. That local involvement and control isn't there. So that's the LIP. Now, if they just go to the state, they don't need the town support. The Board of Selectmen and the other town boards would get a letter when that moves forward. And the role of the Board of Selectmen at that point, just like all of the other boards, would just be basically advisory in nature. The opportunity to put binding components in the MOA no longer exists. There is no town monitoring component, so our Office of Economic and Community Development, for example, will not have an active role in monitoring the affordable component of the project. That would be handled by the state. And also, without the LIP, the developer could modify the project in the process on the basis of certain conditions that were deemed no longer economically viable, and that their interaction on that would just be with the state. On the LIP level, as changes may occur, the DHCD at the state is going to come back to the town, specifically the Board of Selectmen, and look for approval and agreement from the Board of Selectmen. So that's a nutshell of the process of the 40B, as what we're looking at in terms of the process.
Any questions? Okay. Thank you, Robert. Well then, I think we're ready. If there's no questions, we'll hear from the department heads.
Actually,
Okay.
Madam Chair, just one question. So if we did not pursue the LIP and the developer went to the state level, I understand has to go to the zoning board of appeals regardless. The zoning board of appeals denies it. Where does that stand at that point?
So, through the chair, the ZBA, say denies it and so forth, there would probably be a period of trying to work out those things, but ultimately the applicant could appeal to the state that denial by the ZBA.
And this is what we looked into, and I think you spoke of at the last meeting, that it typically sides with the developer 80% or 90% of the time, if I recall the numbers.
Speaking to the trend, on appeal, the trend is generally favorable to the appellant, and that's largely because the state's position is so strong on the need for affordable housing. There is such a shortage throughout the Commonwealth, but the trend ultimately tends to benefit the appellant, and that's state process.
Thank you.
Scott?
No questions, thank you.
Okay. All right, so we're going to hear from the department heads.
Okay.
So, Madam Chair, I want to thank, there are many of our departments that are here tonight, department heads, and you have in your packet, and thank you to Ms. Antonellis for putting together the overview. You'll see on that first page in her report the primary areas of concern, but also some areas of interest which I think are important to stress. As mentioned in the packet, which has been also available to public, are all of the interdepartmental reviews. And Madam Chair, I don't know how you want to structure it, but maybe I would suggest maybe we start with the Superintendent of Public Works, as there's some, not to put him on the spot, but to put him on the spot.
Well, we like putting Mark on the spot.
Yeah, but I also just want to point out the superintendent is here, Chief Murray is here from the police, the town planner, Mark Archambault, Ms. Christoph, the conservation agent, Elisa Hersey, and Alan Minoyan, Economic and Community Development. And I also see there are members of the Conservation Commission and Planning Board in attendance. So if through you, maybe we'd start with the superintendent.
Yeah, Mark.
Thank you. We have the new microphones. Is this,
Right,
That's-
there we go,
that's for the
okay.
camera, so
I like
sure.
the Gene Rayburn ones we had before, but you probably
Match
got old
game
enough.
75, I still love that. Yes, I was.
So, I put my comments together in the February 13th memo, very kind of broad brush. I'm very familiar with the site because it did go through the site plan review for the Ayer Solar 2 project, and there were a lot of challenges with that project. And obviously, that was a solar project with very little public access and daily access. It was basically going to be maintenance facilities. So, and there were, at one point, a potential of 2 residential lots on that site, which I had some concerns with the access road and things like that. So, so generally, most of my comments are related to the infrastructure and design based on my knowledge of the site, what was proposed for a very minor roadway with limited access as to what would be required for a large development like this. Not to say that the engineering can't be accomplished and it can't be done. We built a tunnel under the English Channel, so we, getting a roadway out to a proposed subdivision can't be overcome, but it is very complicated. One of my biggest concerns is that it's a single entrance and exit on a relatively steep road with a wetlands crossing, and if there was an issue with that road, some sort of a failure with that road, then everybody is trapped in the site. So generally, our subdivision rules only allow a cul-de-sac up to 750 feet long. This is about twice that length. So there are some access issues that I think need to be considered as to whether there's a plan B for a second access. Obviously, as the project moves forward, we would be reviewing the stormwater management and the other infrastructure design and construction to make sure it met the town's requirements for infrastructure. As Mr. Pomprion mentioned, that we do have some water quality problems in that part of town, so we would require the water main to be looped. We'd want to make sure you got adequate fire flows out in that area. We'd have to do an impact analysis to see if we had adequate sewer capacity at that point, and if we would have to upgrade our sewer collection system. I am concerned with the stormwater management. There was, as the engineer had said, there was a lot of what we call lid low impact development concepts in the Ayer Solar 2, which in my memo to the board, or to the assistant town manager regarding this project, I quoted my review of the stormwater management design from the Solar 2 project, which says the stormwater management system is somewhat complicated due to the slopes, proximity to wetlands, and limited area for typical drainage basins and structures. The access road includes a number of low-impact development stormwater management structures, including tree boxes, overflow swales, subsurface storage piping with overflow outlets to wetlands. What my concern with that is, if you have a single point of failure in any of those, then the whole system could fail. So that needs to be very carefully designed, but it's up to the engineers to see if they can overcome those issues.
Regarding the stormwater management of the system, would that be approved by the state or by the zoning board of appeals in that process?
Well, and I'm not positive on a 40B what the requirement is. The state has a stormwater management policy that we require developers to comply with. So I'm not sure if in this process it has to comply with that, or it has to attempt to comply with it. But either way, it protects our water resources.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Joanne Christoph is the Conservation Commission agent.
Good evening.
How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Not bad.
Good. In my comments about this on behalf of the Conservation Commission, I noted that there is a wetland crossing, which means the road is going to cross a place where water now flows. There's some complicated engineering around that, and there are Wetland Protection Act issues around that before the Conservation Commission could issue a permit. So the 40B process bypasses, if you will, local bylaws and control, but not state level laws. So the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act, as administered by our Conservation Commission, is still very much in force here, and there is significant wetland in the area of this proposal. Yeah, all that. This is such a complicated project that I suspect the commission would hire a consultant to help us through the process. We share Mark's concerns about stormwater and how that would impact wetland resources. And I think that about sums it up for the conservation and wetlands concerns. Do you have any questions?
So I guess, so you're saying the state, let me rephrase, I'm sorry. The 40B process bypasses the local bylaws, but the state laws would be in effect?
Yes.
So are you, if this was to proceed forward, are you confident at least that the state laws would adequately handle?
Oh, absolutely. And
Okay.
and the Conservation Commission is just spot on in their oversight of this kind of project.
Okay.
Yep. And we don't have our own local wetland protection bylaw yet, so if we did, it wouldn't apply, and we would be using the state's Wetland Protection Act and
And
regulations.
The state, so not, us not having, currently
I-
a bylaw, the state obviously has handled
They've got
all
it
your
covered.
concerns,
Yes.
whenever there's an issue.
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
okay, that's good to know too.
All right, good, thank you.
Thank you.
Can I amend, so Joanne, you mentioned the ACEC?
Identify yourself.
Oh, sorry, I'm Bonnie Tillotson, co-chair for the Conservation Commission. I think there was one additional comment
Sure.
about the...
Yes,
Yeah,
thank you.
okay.
So also in my comments, I mentioned that this project is in an area designated by the state as an ACEC, which is an area of critical environmental concern. There are also natural heritage issues in this area. All of these concerns really just trigger additional review processes on the state level in terms of rare and endangered species, critical habitat and landscape types. None of those concerns would ever halt a project, but it does slow things down so that all of that information can be collected and analyzed. And if there is a rare species issue that would cause some replication somewhere else on the site, that's identified in that process.
And again, the state would be
Yes.
handling all that?
Yes, they do handle all that.
Okay.
We're really fortunate in Ayer in a lot of ways to be in an ACEC. It makes this place unique, really, in all the world, and it's good to keep an eye on it.
Right,
And the state does that for us.
good.
Good.
Okay.
All right.
That's good to know too.
Bonnie, is that good?
That's
Okay.
Thank you.
Good, thanks.
Anybody else have a question?
No, thank you.
Robert?
Alan Manoyan, the Director of Community and Economic Development.
Thank you, Robert.
I would just say the memorandum that I also submitted in February really contained, all of my sort of comments, concerns, considerations, advice. So really, beyond that, I really believe everything was, pretty much recognized in what I had submitted at that point. I'll say that we benefited a couple of weeks ago, myself, Town Planner Mark Archambault, and the members of the Planning Board. We attended the annual conference of the Citizen Planners Training Conference, which was great out at Worcester, and one of the big modules was Chapter 40B. So we had a great benefit fairly recently of having a very thorough interpretation. And it just reinforced the fact that, 40B is simply, what it's about is making sure that the need for regional affordable housing is met. kind of lose sight of that it's 40B is about regional, and then our role, Ayer's role, to contribute to that regional need. And I'll just say, even though the regional need is there, and we have to, of course, do our share in that, as all other communities do in the Commonwealth, we still do have, through this process, the right to protect the fundamentals of what zoning is based upon, which is public safety, public health, and the general welfare of our community. So we just have to make sure to understand that, yeah, we could lose control at the state level, but we have a lot of local control. I would recommend, we are able to do things to make sure that there should be architectural standards for this, and we can have a role to play in that. We should, to the utmost, use our opportunity to use third-party consultants, which we also, in this process, because it is, as my colleague said, is very complex, and so we should make full use of that through the law. And we're prepared, I think, as a team to respond to this and to manage it, whichever path it takes. And unlike my colleagues, the rest of them here who are regulatory officials, planning, zoning, public works, the Office of Community and Economic, we are not regulatory. We have no regulatory power. We suggest and encourage things. So we do have a little bit of a different role than my colleagues who are, in fact, regulatory based. So there we go. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan.
Just two more. Mark Archambault, the town planner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. By going third here, I think everybody has pretty much reiterated what I would say, which is the concern for the road and the access onto Washington Street being primary concerns. I revised my original memo to have a better, I think more realistic comparison to what would be allowed under the underlying zoning in the A2 district, which would, if they were to do a conventional or OSRD subdivision on this property, assuming 8.5 acres of buildable land, they could get approximately 31 units, so the 55 is somewhat in excess of that, but it's fairly close.
I'm sorry, could you just repeat what you just said?
Yes. I recalculated the potential build-out of this property based on a more realistic assessment of the buildable area, which is about 8.5 acres. And so if you apply the A2 zoning district of 12,000 square feet per acre to that, you obtain 31 units of possible build-out. So I think it's important to, compare what we would be able to get under the underlying zoning to what the 40B would yield, which is, I believe, 55 units. Yeah, my main concern, again, are the Washington Street entrance and also the inherent sort of conflict when you have an area that's got greater density abutting in a neighborhood with much lower density, which is the Madigan Lane subdivision with the 40,000 square foot minimum lot size. Though I don't think there's anything in the 40B process per se that would address that. But again, I share the same concerns with the superintendent and with my colleague Joanne and Alan about the wetlands and the stormwater impacts, and so really it's, I think we're all on the same page as far as our concerns.
Any questions?
No. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, thank you.
And last, Madam Chair, the police chief, Chief Murray.
Last but not least. right?
Last but not least.
Evening, everybody. How are you?
Hi, how are you?
Good, thank you. As you can imagine, from the law enforcement standpoint, our only concern would be public safety and security of the area. We really don't have a lot to say in any neighborhoods that go on in town. My concerns are always the same: lighting, or the lack thereof, which you'll see in most neighborhoods nowadays. It's just not allowed for. And I'll share the concerns of the superintendent and also of the other Mark The access off of Washington Street has me concerned, where it's on a blind corner, a hill. And the superintendent also pointed out it's a single point of entry. In such a large neighborhood, it might be detrimental to not only our efforts, but also those of the fire department. I won't speak for them. I know they're not here, but I would like to mention that. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anything else?
That's it from the departments.
For the fire department, Chief Pedrazi had submitted something on the last time, and his concern was around the fire apparatus being able to navigate the road. So,
Is that based on this plan or the original plan?
Yes, so Madam Chair, the Fire Chief, Chief Pedrazi, could not be here this evening, but you do have his concerns, which echo what the police chief said. The single entrance point and the single road is a concern, and he did identify in his comments, as Selectman Hood pointed out, also concerns about fire apparatus, driving, through there. He also understands that at this point, there would have to be additional consultant and engineering work and so forth. But that is a concern of the fire chief, also as articulated by the police chief, is that single point of access, that traffic, and the turning of large apparatus in there.
And that was based on this plan?
On
This one? Oh, this
Yeah.
one.
Okay. Thank you. All right, so we're opening it up to public input. We have a lot of you. I don't know how many of you are going to actually have a comment, so I just ask that everyone, be cognizant of how much time you're taking from maybe somebody else being able to speak, okay? And also to just speak up so everybody will be able to hear you. So, any comments? Mr. Horton?
Thank you, Madam Chair, on the board. A lot of my comments are going to be somewhat repetitive from what I spoke at the last meeting. However, not a whole lot has been introduced by the applicant since the last meeting. The superintendent of the Public Works states the DPW will need more detailed drawings and understanding of the civil design issues for additional review. This is a point I made at the previous meeting. The concept plan is laid out as if it were a flat site, does not provide near enough information for anyone to make an informed decision on a project of this magnitude. The substance of this project is the engineering, the management of stormwater, the construction of a public roadway on a dangerous corner with a steep grade entering Washington Street, the angle of the proposed driveway or roadway as it intersects Washington Street creates an impossible left turn onto Washington Street and an impossible right turn from Washington Street onto the proposed roadway. Mr. Wetzel also stated having a single access road is not recommended. With proper road and site grading, the concept plan could significantly be different. If the concept plan in front of you is likely to change significantly as stated by our superintendent, Wetzel, how can this board take any action until proper engineered plans are available for review? Fire Chief Pedrazi states that the roadways appear inadequate for fire department access. Beyond the significant safety concerns, there are major environmental concerns. I can't understand how this project, by its very name, is described as green. To build it, they're clear-cutting a forest of trees and vegetation in an area of critical environmental concern within the National Heritage Endangered Species Habitat for Rare Wildlife. To get there will require filling and paving over protected wetlands and destroying open space. This environment, as it exists, provides a forested buffer between the high-tension power lines and the homes on Madigan Lane. There is nothing green or friendly about this project. As we also know, there is a proposed solar project for this same property. There's an appeal on the approval of this project that has been filed with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Superior Court by Madigan Lane residents. This appeal is ongoing and has not been resolved. I can't help but question the motivations of this applicant, a named defendant in the complaint. Is it their intent to actually build this 40B project? Or is it an attempt to threaten and intimidate the plaintiffs in an effort to convince us to drop our suit? Either way, any form of endorsement by the Board of Selectmen for this project will provide this applicant with leverage in the pending litigation against them. I can't imagine this board would want to have that kind of influence over a case that is still pending in Massachusetts Superior Court. Thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Diskin?
Good evening.
Hi.
So I guess my first question is if the board got the letter that I submitted and reviewed the letter, should I go over some of those topics or should I leave it up to you guys to take it from there?
Like I said, you know, I don't know how many other people want to speak, so I ask that everybody be cognizant of leaving some time for somebody else, so
Okay, well,
I'll get the highlights.
I sent a letter, it's 2.5 pages with some of my concerns I might for myself. Betsy, who's here with me tonight. And I'll summarize what I think are some of the salient points, although Kevin stole a little bit of my thunder.
Try again. That's why you wanted to go first.
The first part of the discussion that I present to the board in my letter is regarding the procedure that we're in right now, and whether the town actually has a procedure that's strong enough to anticipate a LIP project as it comes before the Board of Selectmen, and whether there should in fact have been some other, or should be put in place, some steps that would assist the Board of Selectmen in a stronger fashion to look at these types of projects, not the least of which is this complicated project, rather than in other projects in town. So I'll leave that up to you guys to talk about, or think about. But the important part of the first section that I think I bring up is that, and I'll read it, at a minimum, any procedure should require a potential developer for a LIP to provide qualifications and information on past housing projects of the developer, particularly those projects built under Chapter 40B or as a LIP. So I would request that the Board of Selectmen obtain qualifications of the proposed developer for the LIP 40B project proposed at 0 Washington Street, including the developer's information on past multifamily housing projects, and in particular, 40B projects. We request that the Board of Selectmen study these qualifications to determine if the town would be willing to partner, which is what they're asking for, with this developer in a so-called friendly 40B as it's been described. I don't think without proper qualifications that the town should endorse a partner with any developer for a LIP project. I think it's a very critical point that hasn't been talked about by anybody, whether the qualifications exist to produce this kind of project. So I'd like to talk about that. The comments made tonight by the professionals in town, this is not in my letter, but the comments made by the professionals in town, you can see over and over again, they talk about the complicated engineering, and of course, Mr. Goldsmith is correct. His firm can come up with the engineering, and that's not really my concern. My concern is not with the engineering. It's never been with the engineering. I saw the drawings for Solar 2, they're great drawings. My concern is the implementation and construction procedures that physically happen in the field. That's where the problem could arise. We can design anything we want. This site is so complicated, there's a solid chance of a problem with the construction and more damage to wetlands and more damage to foliage and more damage to the environment in the area beyond the design plans. So as a neighborhood, we've always been concerned with this at the beginning, even with other projects. This is a complicated site. It's sat there for 100 years in its existing condition. There's a reason for that. The reason for it is no one in 100 years has been able to figure out how to get to that backland and build on it. So my concern is not with the engineering. My concern is the construction and more damage potential in the field. So I think you should consider that as part of not just, just an overall look at the site. And as I said in the letter, and I hope you'll do this before any action is taken, that I'm recommending the Board of Selectmen do a field visit and look at the site, unless you've already done it.
That's not in our purview.
You can do anything.
No, we would have no way of doing it.
Oh,
We would
okay.
literally be standing there. I mean, I realize that these guys, have a different, career and background than I do, but I mean, that is a planning board function. That's not a Board of Selectmen function.
Well, my recommendation is that...
And that would set a precedence, would open up a can of worms down the road.
I disagree with you, I'm sorry. I think that there's enough knowledge on this board, if accompanied by the Conservation Commission and the DPW director, to walk the physical land and understand the complications before they make a decision. That's my thought on that. And you'll see in the letter that I also highlighted some of the areas where the applicant referred to their use of sustainable building practices and development principles, and top of those principles, which are not accomplished here, is a concentration of areas downtown and protecting land and ecosystems in the environment and the use of natural resources wisely. Clearly, the clearing and use of all the land that's available for development, even though the number is higher, you can't build under power lines, you can't build in wetlands. So basically, they're using all the land that's developable, that's available. And I don't think that it complies with the standards that we accept for protecting our open space, either under a state standard or under our current master plan. And that's why I don't think this is the appropriate site for this kind of a project. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone? Yeah.
No, I don't know if there's anybody else, but I think what's lost a little bit here is there's a reason they're pursuing the 40B. I mean, we understand, we all understand the site complications. I mean, I should have asked the Conservation Commission when they were up here, but I don't even see this site being approved if it was a regular development. I mean, so there's a reason we are pursuing they are pursuing the 40B. So they can be, and they're not doing anything wrong. But I mean, we keep saying the board should say this, the board should say that, but unfortunately, we can say what we want, but the 40B process is flawed tremendously for communities. So I just want to point that out. It's only, we can say what we want, but unfortunately, the state loves their 40Bs, and there's a reason this developer is pursuing the 40B process, because this land is not, I mean, if he could put single-family homes on there, I'm sure it'd be much more valuable, but it's not that type of property. So I mean, all this about the wetlands and stuff, I understand that, but we're at a 40B hearing because of the site. Yes, does that make sense? Okay.
Anyone else? Robert, did you start raising your hand?
Oh, no, I was just looking.
All right. Well, it looks like we've heard from everybody. And basically, we can have our choices, it would appear, at the moment, is looking into pursuing a memorandum of agreement for what is called a friendly 40B, or not pursuing anything and they could still do the 40B.
So one more question, Mr. Costa?
Yes.
Does, as Mr. Diskin pointed out, asking about the developer,
Sure.
does this process goes through and it's permitted, can it be sold?
It can.
That's how I understood it too. So this vetting who is the owner now really doesn't mean much.
To some extent, that's true. So one of the requirements, the LIP application form itself that gets submitted to the Department of Housing and Community Development is about a 15 to 18 page form with a series of exhibits. The package ends up being about 2 inches thick when all is said and done. And part of that application form is a requirement that you identify all the members of your project team, from the applicant to the landowner, attorney, engineer, architect, etc., as well as the development experience, either of the developer or the development team. What often happens these days is you've got developers who are middlemen, individuals who own sites, others who come in and get properties under agreement and then pursue the development track. They bring on consultants, like myself, like Cal, who have experience with engineering, with legal work associated with affordable housing developments. They get them permitted because the team has that sort of experience, and then they often find the developer. Either, a project like this, you're probably not going to bring in a Toll Brothers or a Pulte Homes. It's too small of a development. Those are 100, 200, 300 unit developments. But there are many developers who specialize in these size projects, and eventually the project gets sold to that sort of a developer. That would probably be what would occur here.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
I asked that question because I've kind of did a little research on that, and Ken brought up the point, so there's really no point in betting anybody at this point as a developer, because it most likely would be sold. The hard part is the permitting part, obviously.
So if we work towards a memorandum of agreement with the site and it is sold, that memorandum of agreement would stay in place?
Yes, the memorandum of agreement, once executed, is enforceable as a contract.
Okay.
We have a question. Yes?
Hi, Jessica Gino. One question. I know you said the general trend is for the state to support 40B projects. They're generally more successful. My question as just a resident would be, does that hold if you've got a 40B project that there are such safety concerns expressed? The roadway on a hill and a curve, the single entrance. Is the state automatically, are we going to assume they're automatically going to be biased for 40B when the project itself might present real hazards to people living there?
Robert?
Madam Chair, through you, just to clarify, Jess, the point was on appeal. 40Bs that are denied by the ZBA, the general trend is on the appeal, it favors the appellant. Ultimately, the applicant will get the project. To your point, obviously, all of the concerns, especially public safety and so forth, those all have to be met under the non-LIP. As you've heard, it's the state. If it's a LIP, it is obviously state, but also the local application of the local bylaws and so forth.
I guess wouldn't the process of entering the LIP to address these concerns?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess that's.
Sorry.
No. I guess I totally understand the abutters in this process. I have 70 acres of town land next to me that I would go wild if I was told that this development was going in. But if we're somewhat powerless to stop it to some degree. In my opinion, as much as I get their concerns and would love to address it, and I think we're better off in the position of trying to get everything possible that benefits. I mean, obviously, developers still have the right to say no, and if we get a little too greedy, but along with the abutters' input as well as the department heads.
Right.
I just think we're kind of. It'd be so easy. It'd be nice if we could just say no to some of this stuff and just protect the abutters. But unfortunately, we're stuck.
So, and for things for discussion in a potential memorandum of agreement would be things like obviously the traffic study,
Correct.
engineering study, stormwater management. That just to mention a couple of things that have been mentioned.
The water, the
tonight.
sewer capacity.
Yeah, the capacity, the water
The
sewer.
layout of the road, the ability for the safety trucks to get down. I kind of do agree with Chris. I think that we would almost be better off trying to get a memorandum of agreement that takes care of all the concerns that department heads have and also the abutters in order to, if it's going to move forward, as the trend seems to be, at least try to get what we can under control.
And so to kind of recap a little bit what you said earlier, Robert, if this is the choice we choose, this would also mean that the town would be monitoring. So if we were
Correct.
to pursue a memorandum of agreement, and it was obviously agreed to, not only is the DCHS, is there?
DHCD.
DHCD.
Housing Community Development Department, yeah.
So they would be involved,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
They would also make sure that the town was made aware of anything going on, and the town itself would be monitoring, and I would assume if we saw something, we would be contacting the state also, right?
Correct. So, as I said earlier, the monitoring piece, so our Office of Community and Economic Development would play an active role in the, I don't want to say the management, but the handling of the affordable component. In other words, making...
Or via monitoring.
The monitoring, making sure that those units are, going, to the proper, income and so forth. So there is a level of involvement. The non-LIP, as I said, it's handled out in Boston. There's no local involvement.
So if we were to pursue this, and all these lists and everything, and they agree, we all sign in, would there be like specific milestones that would have to be met? And, as far as like the traffic study has to be done, and I'm just using dates for example, okay? The traffic study has to be completed by May 1st. The engineering study has to be completed by, June 1st. Again, only using dates for example. Would something like that also be included?
Speaking on the town's end, if we enter into a memorandum of agreement, it's obviously a negotiation.
Right,
And then the attorney may have a different perspective, but in my experience, memorandum of agreement can be very specific and detailed. It can be, more general, but the key benefit or the key advantage to the LIP, as all of you have mentioned, it is an opportunity for the town to have some direct binding input. If it just goes to the state, it's going to go through that process.
If I could, Madam Chair, so I want to just be clear about what the applicant's expectations are and certainly willingness with respect to working cooperatively with the town in the context of a memorandum of agreement. So it was referenced before by your town manager that what often happens at the conclusion of this process where an applicant appears before the Board of Selectmen and seeks a LIP endorsement is the Board of Selectmen signs one of two documents, either a letter of support, and I provided a draft to you a little bit earlier today of what that would look like. It's a page or two that generally describes the project and indicates your support for the project as it's been presented to you, or alternatively, this concept of a memorandum of agreement. And we're amenable to either. We have no preference one over the other. I can understand why the town might want something more formal, like a memorandum of agreement, and we're comfortable with that. But the memorandum of agreement is a contractual document that is enforceable as a contract, but it can't modify the statutory process for the actual 40B review. So once we go to the subsidy, which if it's a LIP project would be the Department of Housing and Community Development, and once DHCD performs its review, which takes somewhere between 60 and 120 days, and sends it back to us, presumably with a project eligibility letter that allows us to make our application to the ZBA. The ZBA will then perform its review, and as part of that review, they will look at all of the various permits and approvals that would issue from ZBA, Planning, Conservation, Board of Health, all of the permitting authorities. That's why it's called a comprehensive permit, because they stand in the shoes of those various permitting authorities. So certainly a memorandum of agreement can do things like define the project. You could say in your memorandum of agreement, our expectation as a Board of Selectmen and signing below is that the project as proposed to the subsidy and then to the Zoning Board of Appeals is going to be substantially what's been presented to us. It's not going to exceed the 55 units we see here. We're not going to see a project that has 75 units. It's going to endeavor to provide some secondary access if that can feasibly be accomplished. It's going to maintain stormwater management within the site in accordance with state standards. You could include all of that in there. To the extent that the board wants to see additional reviews, traffic study, engineering reviews, etc., those would typically be performed anyway by the Zoning Board of Appeals. So those would occur as part of the ZBA process. Now, I have seen for some more substantial projects, 200, 300, 400 unit projects, there be lengthy negotiations on a memorandum of agreement where a board will require those things be done now. We want to see a water capacity study now before we sign anything. And what happens with that large of a project is often a proposal will be made by the applicant to provide for on-site treatment, for example, if that's what's necessary to support the development, if the existing infrastructure doesn't exist, sufficient infrastructure doesn't exist today. My client is on a clock. He's looking ahead, he's looking to 2020 and saying, and this sounds ridiculous, but this is just the world we live in, he's saying, I want to get a shovel in the ground by the end of 2020. Well, when you start calculating backwards and figuring the time to put together an application, whether it be a LIP or a traditional 40B application, get it to the subsidy, give the subsidy 60 to 120 days to review it. Then it comes back to the applicant puts together a comprehensive permit application, gets that application to the ZBA. ZBA has 30 days to open a public hearing. They can then keep that hearing open for up to 180 days. Then they have another 40 days on the back end to render their decision. Then there's an appeal period. You've eaten up pretty quickly over a year in terms of that complete process. So what we're looking for is an endorsement, whether it be in the form of a letter of support or a memorandum of agreement that will hold us to the commitments we've made so far, that you're not going to see something that is substantially different than what you've got here. And if you have expectations as to what the ZBA is going to require as part of the permitting process, looking at certain aspects of the development that you yourselves are concerned with, or your department heads or your staff have expressed their concerns with, or the neighbors have expressed their concerns with, by all means, those can be referenced in the memorandum of agreement. But we're not prepared to begin spending substantial funds, and this is consistent with what we said a couple months ago, conducting extensive traffic studies or water capacity analyses or redesigning roadways at this conceptual stage before we've even gone to the subsidy. We could go to the subsidy and be rejected, and then we don't have a project at all. And my client can't go $50,000 or $75,000 more into this project to find out that the project isn't moving forward, even through the subsidy stage. It's a risk that he'll be willing to take before getting to the Zoning Board of Appeals, because that's what the law requires.
Can I just ask, why is this so important to them that they get the LIP? Is the application, is that a completely different application that goes to the state, depending on whether you get the town's approval or you do not?
May I address that, Madam Chair? So it is a different application form. One thing that I'll just clarify from what the town manager had said earlier is, if you go the traditional 40B route, the non-LIP route, you actually don't make application to DHCD. You make application to Mass Housing, which is a quasi-public agency. It performs a function similar to DHCD, although it's not truly a state agency, but it acts as a subsidy under Chapter 40B. So Mass Housing has its own application form, which is different than DHCD's LIP application form. So it is a different application form that we'd be completing. Truth be told, developers like LIPs for two reasons. One, they're viewed as more cooperative and they give an opportunity for the community to buy into the project early on, the Board of Selectmen to have a say as to what they want. I represent municipalities for a living. So when I have private clients come to me with 40B proposals, I say, let's try to give it a go and do it the friendly way, do it the LIP way. Now I understand that may not be perceived as friendly to everybody. I've seen very unfriendly LIPs and I've seen friendlier traditional 40B developments, but there's a benefit, I think, to both sides. The community has an opportunity, the selectmen have an opportunity to buy into the development, to make the concerns known, to execute memoranda of agreement, and I think that the developer is viewed as more of a cooperative partner in the process than just the developer that bullies his way into the community, and the first notice that the community receives of the application is when they get notice from Mass Housing that you've got a 30-day comment period, and guess what? You've got an application coming into your ZBA.
I would suggest that the value of this 40B project as a LIP, if they're going to market it and sell it to a developer, which I guess we've talked about tonight, it's much more valuable as a LIP project than not. If this is just, they just got to flip this whole project to some unknown developer at this point.
But could they not do that even on a traditional?
Well, I think they can.
They could, but it's more attractive if they know the town's.
It is more attractive, but would we not lose because
Not once the permit's in place.
if we've got a memorandum of agreement, then the new person's still got to adhere to that memorandum. But if there's no memorandum of agreement, then the new owner
I'm speaking
wouldn't have to.
specifically to the value of this project being, this approved permit or project, whatever you want to call it, being sold. It's more valuable as a LIP. In my opinion.
I understand the point they get, but as someone who has developed property, once it's permitted, any unknown developer, that's all they care about. They don't care about you, the abutter, or, within reason, they're gonna build this, they're gonna try to make as much money, non-profit, the 40B, but, once it's permitted, it's permitted. There's many construction projects that happen that people aren't happy with, but once the permit's there, and how it's laid out is how they're gonna build it.
Again, I'm only speaking.
Yeah, no, I understand your point. I'm just saying that once the permit's there, it really doesn't matter, I've worked on projects where neighbors are sneaking through at night and moving engineering stakes, and you know what I mean? And because they object to it, or doing stuff like that. But ultimately, in the end, the project still gets done.
My only point, Madam Chair, was maybe there'd be some truth to that if the developer intended to try and sell this project before it was fully permitted.
Yeah.
There are instances where projects have been flipped after the lip endorsement issues. Doesn't happen very often. Most developers want to acquire fully permitted projects, and most middlemen who own properties or get them under agreement are required to fully permit them before they can really sell them and make any much of a profit for themselves. So I can tell you, speaking for my own client, that the intention here is not to sell. We have no partner that we're currently in discussions with. So the intention here is not to try and sell the project if a lip endorsement should issue. The intention here is to fully permit the site.
And then probably sell.
Then probably sell, that's correct.
So, my question is, when does the Army Corps of Engineers do the engineering on the road? Is that before we go? Can that be part of the letter of agreement? Or is that something that you do before you go for your application, or is it later on?
Madam Chair, the Army Corps does not engineer the road. We engineer the road. And if we exceed certain thresholds, and in this particular case, it would be 5,000 square feet of filling of wetlands, which we very likely will exceed, we need to go and file a 401 water quality with the state and a 404 water quality with the Army Corps of Engineers. It's a permit that we need, a permit process that we need to go through with the Army Corps. It's not them designing anything.
So when do you go through that process?
We would go through that process as part of the ZBA application and file, and we do it concurrently with that. All the serious detailed engineering is not going to happen until that ZBA process. And that Adam took you through the timeline. The piece he referred to quickly was put an application together. Well, our engineering would probably be, I don't see it even in 2 months. I see it at least a 3-month effort to engineer this project, and it could go 4 months easily. Mm-hmm. So that's part of the process as well.
I think it would be worth trying to hammer out a memorandum of agreement so we can have some control. I agree. I don't like the 40B process. I never have. When I first got the email, I was still on bed rest, and I was like, going to be kidding me, because I'm not a fan of this. It needs to be revised. There are loopholes. I totally understand the abutters' perspective on this, but I think we're doing a disservice if we say no, we don't support it, because it's coming regardless, or at least their application to the state, and then we've lost any say. State guidelines tend to be a lot less restrictive than town guidelines, so I think the abutters still have the zoning board of appeals process too. Once we get there, I think they have more say, at least dispute it or deny it. But I think if we don't act now, we're just leaving it up to the developer to propose what he wants, and it seems like a pretty decent plan to me, on pace. So I'm sure there could probably be more units put in if they wanted to, per state guidelines.
But if we have an MOA, we can say no more than.
Yeah, absolutely.
And this is our only opportunity to really enter into that kind of an agreement and have that ability.
Yeah.
I agree.
I guess the point is, in the end, it's probably gonna happen regardless, so whether it's popular or not, I think we're entering into the MOA is actually helping the abutters and the people in the department and the towns that have issues with it now. At least we have our say. We can work with them.
Right.
Or try to. I mean, ultimately, they could say we don't like any of your stuff and still apply for their permit without the lift, but I think it makes sense to at least enter into the MOA.
Right. No, I agree.
So what's the next step then? We need a motion or do we just?
I guess we need to make a motion that we want to pursue an MOA.
Yeah.
And have you, yeah.
If it, the will of the board, Madam Chair, then a motion would be to authorize the town manager on behalf of the board to commence with putting together the MOA with the applicant.
Town council.
Yeah.
And town council.
And
Yeah,
town
town
council. You would want town council to review it.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
3 times. I want to review it at least 3 times.
And just so everybody's aware, we have been in consultation with our town council. They're not present tonight, but we've reached out to them on many occasions regarding this meeting tonight and, prior. So it's not, as much as I believe you, Mr. Costa, we're not just going on Mr. Costa's word on how this works.
Yes.
Madam Chair, as Attorney Costa had mentioned, I mean, the memorandum of agreement, if you will, the general framework is sort of the project that, we know that the project that they're putting forward, but from the board, what are some of the things that you would like in the MOA or mentioned? I mean, I heard, the traffic. So I guess what I'm getting at is, I'm deferring to the board, how do we determine some of the things that you want in the memorandum of agreement?
I think for one would be a project that is only this size or smaller, capped at 55 units.
Okay, so 55 cap.
Town planner recommended 31.
I'm sorry, Kevin.
Your town planner recommended 31 in his narrative.
Yes, but we're saying no more than 55 is what we're saying right now.
I believe the town planner had also mentioned some plantings and some buffer of natural foliage and
Fast growing.
fast growing. I know there's already been issues up there with tree cutting, but for the abutters. And obviously, I agree with everything that was brought up by Mark and Chief Murray and the rest of the department heads in terms of their concerns. Whether they can all be addressed in an MOA, I don't know, but I think some of those are really important, especially the traffic entrance onto Washington.
And we can vet that with council, obviously.
sure.
They have the list of concerns.
Yeah.
They'll help draft the MOA.
Yeah.
So,
Things like proper lighting, that there will be proper lighting.
That's such a great area these days too. Now there's a lot of developments with the white light. I mean that might be a benefit, but it might not be a benefit for.
and I expect that to be taken up under the ZBA
Yeah.
comprehensive, because that's really planning boards. That the ZBA will take charge of planning board, like site plan requirements.
What else? I mean, it's all, pretty much everything that the department heads, I would assume, pretty much everything that the department heads have stated a concern on. That we want to ensure that are going to be addressed.
So, Robert, if I could, we could draft up something with council, Robert and I, present it to the board, obviously before you have to sign it, so you have to approve it, but I think we can take a stab at coming up with something based on everything that we discussed tonight. For sure.
And the applicant, of course, has to also be in it's a negotiation as well.
Right,
So,
but we gotta agree what we're
Yeah.
saying before he gets to agree as to what we wrote.
And Madam Chair, that was my only comment, if I could, through you, that I would just like, the motion, however it might be crafted, to provide the flexibility for staff, town council, to work with me and my client to sort of shape this document, understanding that anything ultimately has to get the selectmen's eyes upon it. What I've seen happen in some of these instances is the agreement gets negotiated meeting to meeting by the selectmen. And that can become very challenging because not only does it take forever, but you end up spending substantial portions of your agenda getting into the nitty-gritty that could have been worked out with staff. So I'm happy to either attempt to put a draft together incorporating some of these issues, to let you put a draft together with your council and review it. I've got no preference as to who crafts it, but I'll work with town staff as much as I can to get something before the board as soon as possible.
All right, so how are we doing the motion?
Let me just wing it and see if we can tweak it. I make a motion to authorize the town manager and town council to enter in negotiations with Ayer Green Residences on a MOA for 0 Washington Street development, 40, Chapter 40B project.
Second.
That'll work?
All those in favor?
Aye.
And the chair says aye.
Thank you very much for your time, and we'll be before you again sometime in the future.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, anything else tonight? Okay, with that,
Make a motion to adjourn?
seconded, all in favor? Good night, everyone, we are adjourned.